am here in the Douglas Park area near the Wascana Marsh, and we are going to talk to James Barr, who's president of Friends of the Wascana Marsh, and talk a little bit about what is, and it's funny because I grew up in this area, what is the Wascana Marsh?
Well, sure. Thanks, Lisa. So the Wascana Marsh is actually an area that people would generally think of as part of Wascana Lake. But the true Wascana Lake area is a part that's over in front of the Legislative Building. And Wascana Marsh is everything that's from the Broad Street Bridge over to the Ring Road. And it's part of a federally protected bird sanctuary that contains an area that was set aside for conservation back in 1913 when a city planner decided to set apart an area of land that was close to Wascana Lake that ultimately became the Wascana Centre.
So I know that the Wascana, like the Wascana Park and the surrounding area is taken care of by the Provincial Capital Commission. Do they help you out here in any way, any staffing, or is this all run by volunteers or taken care of?
Well, the Wascana Marsh, there's various landowners that own the lands that border the marsh area, but the area is part of the 2,300 acre Wascana Centre that is taken care of by the Provincial Capital Commission. So Friends of Wascana Marsh is a volunteer organization, so we don't actually own or control any parts of the marsh. Our group exists to promote the ecology and the preservation of the area, and we really try and tell people about the marsh and have educational activities, and as necessary we lobby for the marsh. Friends of Wascana Marsh was actually created back in 2004 in advance of the big dig that deepened Wascana Lake, because originally the plan was to dump a lot of the dirt into the marsh area. So the Friends was established to try and lobby to have that not happen because of the turtle species and the other species that live in and around the marsh. And so ultimately it was successful, and the land was dumped up on the big hill behind me here and over across the Ring Road by the SciAst campus. And that's when Friends began, and so that's part of our legacy.
So I mean, this is an amazing area, and you talk about education. So I immediately go to the kids. Do the kids know about this? Are there school programs, or how can they find out more?
Yeah. Well, what we find is that a lot of people don't really know a lot about the Wascana Marsh area. People, when they generally go to Wascana Centre, they would think of more the developed area that's by the ledge and the walking trails in that area. I think some people venture out to the hill. There's walking trails, and some people like to run up and down the hill. But I don't think that as many people know about the marsh area, and specifically what's behind us here, the Habitat Conservation Area. So the Habitat Conservation Area is a 23-acre section of the Wascana Marsh that used to be privately owned, but in the 70s, the landowners decided to give it back to Wascana Centre for preservation. So since that time, it was protected, it was fenced off, and it has not been developed. It's been allowed to be natural. So this is an area here that when we have educational events, we generally have our education events in the Habitat Conservation Area, because there are some invasive species in there from its previous use, but it's essentially left natural. And what you can find is inside there are both an inner and an outer marsh. So there's the outer marsh that has got reeds and lakeshore that are used by ducks and geese and migratory birds. But inside there's also some protected marshlands that has reeds and native grasses that are a good habitat for insects. A lot of the insects come and lay their eggs, and then that's where they grow up there and protected. And so it's not exposed to the open lake. So it's protected from the fish species who don't come in there. Mm-hmm. There are a couple fish species that live inside the inner marsh area, such as the stickleback and the fathead minnow, but they're able to live in a low oxygen environment, which when you see a non-moving marsh area, it's got low oxygen. So they eat the insects, but they're protected from the big fish predators as well. And the insects, when they grow up and they take to flight, then they're also a great source of food for the birds that migrate through and the birds that live in the area. There's over 350 species that live in Wascana Marsh and pass through, including 115 bird species that you can see at certain times of the year.
Yeah. I can see why you're the president. There is so much passion and so much knowledge there. Before we were talking, I just want to, because I know time's going to run out, but we were talking about the owls. And you were talking about a project that the kids can do, and I want you to tell, because it was just cool.
Sure. So Friends of Wascana Marsh has historically had what we call the Wings Over Wascana Festival that's been going on for a number of years. We haven't had the big festival for a couple of years because there's been some national festivals we've tied into, and then the pandemic has stopped us. But we've always had what we call school days, where we get a number of classrooms from different schools together, and then they come out and they do different stations to learn about wildlife. And one of the stations that they often have is called dissection of owl pellets. So if you're not familiar with how owls eat, owls catch small mammals like mice or shrews or sometimes things a little bit larger, but they ingest their prey whole. And they can't digest the hair and the bones. So the remnants kind of sit in their stomach, and then they essentially clump together, and then the owls essentially throw them up. And if you know what you're looking for, you can go and find them in an owl habitat, and they're just little clumps of what looks like kind of fur. And what we do is we have the kids get a little pan and put them in and dissect them, and then you can see the skull and all the bones that are largely intact, and the fur and whatnot, and so they can see what the animals were before the owls ate them.
Wow. Like, I'm 52 years old, and I feel like I've seen these pellets and never knew to dissect them and what they were. I really appreciate that. Any other projects that you have worked on throughout the year that you can share before we get into my last question would be, how can people help?
Yeah. Well, over the years, we've sponsored a number of different projects. A couple of years ago, we sponsored having goats come and graze in the Wascana Centre, in the Habitat Conservation Area, in order to try and chew down some of the invasive species, because what we have in the center is a lot of caragana bushes that used to exist as windrows when it was privately owned, and the goats actually they like to eat the caragana bush, so they'll eat it right down to the ground so it won't come back. So we did that for a year. We also sponsored a turtle project where there was a grad student from the U of R who was doing a multi-year research study to come and tag the western painted turtles, and actually she discovered the largest western painted turtle in North America. So her name's Olga, so she lives somewhere in the marsh area here. So that's how they discovered where the turtles are and where they move through tagging them and then tracking them and how they hibernate. So there's a couple of projects that we've worked on.
Wow, it's amazing. So my last question is just, how can the community get involved, or how can they help you? I mean, from donations to sponsorship to, come visit you. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, how the community can help Wascana Marsh and the Habitat Conservation Area, I would say is number one is come and see it, enjoy it, learn what's here, teach your kids about the species and the natural habitat that we have right here within the city. And if you've never been here, come down and explore it for yourself. And another thing that people can do is work to protect it. Don't bring dogs or animals down right by the shore, because that's where the birds nest and that's where the migrating birds come through. So keep your pets away from the shoreline. Some things that you could do is you could sponsor a shoreline cleanup event, or even bring a bag, and if you're walking around the area and you see garbage, pick it up, because that certainly can help keep it clean. And one other thing I would say is be really careful of having events that have a lot of noise or light down by the waterfront in the marsh area, because it certainly can be a detriment and can scare away some of the migrating birds. And another thing you could do is lobby to the community leaders to protect the area and keep it safe.
Now, you are a member, you're the president of the board. Are you ever looking for, if people are watching, go, I really believe this, I love this, are there ever openings?
Absolutely. We have openings for members at large, people who want to become part of and kind of receive communications from our group. We also have got opening for board members if people are interested in joining up to try and help determine what our events and projects are and help lead them. So we are always looking for new help, and one of the biggest things that will help us do more is having more volunteer effort. And if anyone is interested in making sponsorships, I mean, we certainly accept sponsorships as well. We have a mechanism to provide charitable receipts for sponsorships, and that certainly helps us to put on the events that we sponsor throughout the year.
Good. Well, I want to thank you, James, for taking the time to share all of this with us. This is a beautiful area, and thank you for taking care of it, and thank you to all of your team members, and of course the Wascana Centre, Provincial Capital Commission. Just thanks for all the work you do.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there we go. We are with James Barr, Friends of the Wascana Marsh, and we are located, the Douglas Park track, and I think that's Libel Field, is right there. So we are right here in the water, and this is Wascana Marsh behind me. We hope you can come see it and enjoy it.